Hey there, it's the first week of May 2026. That means it's time for the monthly Cape Coral Real Estate Market Update video. I do one of these every single month. We're going to take a look at the stats that just came in from April 2026, and we're going to compare those to the last couple of years and kind of get a feel for where the market is right now and where the market is heading. I'm going to do things a little bit different in this video this month. I'm going to break this entire report down into a couple different videos, 2 or 3 different videos. I'm going to link them down in the description here. This video, we're going to cover just the broad entire residential real estate market, and we're also going to talk about vacant lots, vacant residential lots in this video, as well as some advice if you're a current buyer in the Cape Coral real estate market, and some advice if you're a current seller in the Cape Coral real estate market. So the chapters are going to be down there in the video timelines, and then if you want to take a look at those other videos where we really dive into the numbers in some of the categories like Gulf access single family homes, condos, non-waterfront single-family homes. Those links to those videos will be down in the description of this video, or you can just jump over to my channel and find those videos. I'm going to release all these videos right at the same time, so they'll all be there available for you. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Dustin Guthrie. I've been a full-time real estate broker here in Cape Coral for 20 years. I do a video like this every month, but these are in addition to the weekly videos I put out where we're just talking about some really good, useful information, things like insurance and utility assessments and taxes and all those good stuff that you need to know about if you are interested in Cape Coral and Southwest Florida. So if that describes you, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you already haven't done so. And I'd love to have you around for these. And if I can do anything for you, if you are in the market for something, either buying or selling a property here anywhere in Southwest Florida, give me a call, shoot me a text, shoot me an email, whatever it takes. I always love hearing from the folks that watch this channel. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start this report. Again, we're going to be covering the broader residential real estate market stats in this video, as well as the vacant land. And I always start out this report by just giving you, for fun, letting you see what the highest and the lowest sales of last month were here in the city of Cape Coral. So let's start out with the lowest sales of last month. All right, let's take a look at the lowest sales of the month of April 2026 for the entire city of Cape Coral. Again, we're going to be looking at a few different categories, and we'll start out with the lowest overall sale, which was usually always the lowest condo sale, and it's this one right here in the Southwest Cape, 4520 Southwest 8th Place, unit number 4. This is over there just north of Cape Coral Parkway and west of Skyline Boulevard. It's in a great location over there, sort of close to what we call the downtown area of Cape Coral. And this was actually a townhouse, a 2-story townhouse. 4520 Southwest 8th Place, unit number 4 is a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, built in 1982. It's got just under 900 square feet of living area inside. And boy, this one got snapped up pretty quickly. It was on the market at $99,000, but it sold in 30 days for $80,000. $80,000. It looked like it needed some work in there, certainly, definitely some TLC to be had in this place, but great location over there. And, you know, it wasn't all that bad. It looked fairly clean. It just maybe needed some new flooring, new paint. It was dated inside, had a popcorn ceiling. But I think one of the main reasons that this property was the lowest condo that sold last month is the fees. The fees here are pretty darn high. They're at $726 a month, and I think that's kind of a symptom of the broader condo market. What we've seen in the last couple of years, these fees have gone up significantly, especially from 2024 to 2025, was when we kind of saw a big jump as everybody was recovering from the 2022 hurricane. And these associations were restocking their reserves and a few other things they had to do with new milestone inspections and things like that. So congrats to the buyers and the sellers. For all intents and purposes, this looks like a pretty darn good unit at $80,000. And I think there was only 1 or 2 condos this month that got under that $100,000 mark. So certainly congrats to the buyers and the sellers on this place. The lowest condo sale, 4520 Southwest 8th Place, unit number 4, $80,000. Let's take a look at the lowest single-family home sale of last month, and we're going to be in the southeast for this one. Not too far from that property, though, 3405 Santa Barbara Boulevard. That's right on Santa Barbara Boulevard, just a little bit south of Veterans Parkway. So this is on a pretty busy road here, which probably had something to do with why it was the lowest single-family home sale. But this one also sold really, really quick. They put it on the market at $165,000, had multiple offers on it right away. It sold in 3 days and closed actually 11 days after it went under contract for $180,000, $15,000 over list price. I'm telling you, when these single-family homes get under that $200,000 mark, doesn't matter what condition they're in, they pretty much get snapped up pretty quickly. And this one Even though there aren't any photos on this one, I can tell from the description that it needed quite a bit of work in there, probably needed a new roof, and no doubt had quite a bit of major repairs inside there. But this was on Central Utilities, and it's in a great location over there in the southeast section of Cape Coral. So congrats to the buyers and the sellers. This one's definitely the lowest single-family home sale. I think this was the only single-family home sale that wasn't like a partially built home or something that closed last month for under $200,000. So once again, you get a single-family home, even if it's beat up like this one was, under that $200K mark, and it sells pretty quickly, and sometimes they go under multiple offers, and we're seeing multiple offers more and more these days. I hadn't seen multiple offers in several years, and just in the last month I've had 2 or 3 different instances where we've had listings go under multiple offer situations. So congrats to the buyers and the sellers. That 180 was the lowest single family home sale. Let's look at the lowest golf access home sale. I know a lot of folks that watch this channel like golf access homes. Let's see what the cheapest golf access home sold for last month. 2931 Southeast 5th Avenue. Again, we're in the Southeast Cape. This one was listed at $395,000. It sold in 7 days. Sold for a pretty steep discount too, $320,000. And once again, this was the only home, golf access home, that sold under $400,000 last month. And that's sort of the litmus test on the bottom of the market for golf access homes. You get under that $400,000, and even if these properties are beat up and they don't have a pool and maybe they're pretty dated or something, but they've got a golf access location, you get under 400 grand and almost certainly those things are going to sell pretty quickly. I'm sure something came up in the inspection on this one for it to sell for $75,000 less than list price in only 7 days on the market. But nevertheless, this was built in 1979, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It did not have a pool, but just over 1,400 square feet of living area inside with a 2-car attached garage. And once again, this one doesn't have any photos, so it needed probably a bit of work inside there. But it did have some good features on it. It had a newer roof on it that was put on in 2021. Did have some impact windows. A little bit far from open water, though, maybe 45, 50 minutes away from open water, which is still not terrible, especially when you're talking about this under $400,000 mark. But certainly congrats to the buyers and the sellers on this one. 2931 Southeast 5th Avenue was the only golf access home that sold under $400,000 last month. And it sold a fair amount under $400,000 at $320,000 cash right at the end of April. All right, let's jump over to the fun ones. Let's take a look at the highest sales of the month of April. We're right in the middle of season right now, and usually we get some high dollar sales this time of year. So let's check out what sold last month in the way of the highest sales of the month for the entire city of Cape Coral. All right, highest sales of the month of April 2026 for the entire city of Cape Coral. We'll follow a pretty similar pattern here. We'll look at a few different categories. Let's start off with the highest condo sale this past month. And once again, I think for the 3rd straight month, the highest condo sale of the entire city happened in Tarpon Point. These absolutely beautiful luxury high-rise condos there in Tarpon Point Marina. And this one was a gorgeous one. This is a 3-bedroom. This is a 6061 Silver King Boulevard, unit number 705. It's on the 7th floor overlooking that marina and all the waterfront down there. And once again, these units are huge as far as condos go. Just under 3,000 square feet of living area inside. This one had a 3-bedroom. This one was a 3-bedroom plus a den, 3 1/2 baths. And these units, these high-rise units, were built in 2007, and that makes them pretty darn new when it comes to Cape Coral condos. We don't have too many condos that are, you know, only 20 or so years old, but these are just gorgeous over there. And this one had been fully updated inside. It's got a huge kitchen with a butler's pantry, big giant panoramic views of the waterfront, the marina there, and of course looking across the Caloosahatchee River and then on into the city of Cape Coral as well. And not only was this a completely updated unit inside there, but these also come with 2-car garages down on the 1st or 2nd floor. I forget where those garages are. I think they're the 2nd floor of the high-rise building. But these actually have optional. You can get an optional pool cabana in Tarpon Point as well if you wanted to have a little kitchenette and things there right next to the pool. But all of those great amenities come with a pretty big cost. The fees over there are almost $19,000 a year just for the HOA fees, and that's pretty high as far as things go on the west coast of Florida. You see that a little more common over there on the East Coast in some of those beautiful high-rise buildings over there, but we don't usually see the condo fees over here get quite that expensive until you kind of get down into Bonita Springs and Naples and stuff like that. But Absolutely gorgeous unit over there. Congrats to the buyers and the sellers. This was listed at a $1.325 million. It took 207 days, but finally did sell for $1.22 million. And $1,220,000 was the highest condo sale last month in the city of Cape Coral. And actually, the runner-up was also $1 million, over $1 million rather. And it was also right there in Tarpon Point. So some pretty extraordinary condos there in Tarpon Point. Let's jump over before we take a look at the overall biggest or the highest sale of the month. Let's look at the highest non-golf access home. You know, if you can imagine, almost every single month, in fact, every one that I can remember so far, the highest sale of the month is always a golf access home. It's on some kind of body of water where you can get access out to the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America, whatever you want to call that body of water. So before we take a look at the highest overall, let's take a look at the highest sale that was not on a golf access canal. And this one wasn't on the water at all, but it's in a beautiful gated community over there, once again in the southwest section of Cape Coral. This one's at 5513 Merlin Lane in Cape Coral. This is in Cape Harbor, one of the very few non-waterfront homes in Cape Harbor. Most of those properties are on that beautiful golf access canal right there next to Cape Harbor Marina. But this one was not. It's off water, and it was listed at $1,079,000, and it sold for in 3 days. It sold for just 3 days. It took to sell this property at $1,050,000. $1.05 million is where it finally closed. But this is a beautiful custom home. It was built in 2024. Tile roof, 3-car garage, just absolutely modern finishes and floor plan inside. Got an absolutely extraordinary big outdoor living space with a pool and a spa and a sun shelf in the pool there, outdoor kitchen, 90-degree sliders, of course, hurricane impact windows and doors everywhere. And even though this is a really high-end HOA down there, these single-family homes, the HOA fees aren't too bad there. They're about $270 a month, and you get access to all the amenities there next to Cape Harbor Marina. But congrats to the buyers and the sellers. Obviously, Cape Harbor is a pretty in-demand location down there in the Southwest Cape, and even the non-golf access homes or the non-waterfront homes are selling for over $1 million, and $1.05 million was the highest non-golf access home sale of the month of April 2026. All right, let's look at the big guy. Biggest one this month. We had a couple of sales over $2 million this month, and the biggest one was this one right here, 1110 Lenox Court, Cape Coral, Florida. This one was listed at $2.8499, $2,849,900. It was on the market just a little bit over 3 months and sold right at the beginning of April at $2.6 million. But this is an absolutely stunning property right here. It's not brand new. It was built in 2021, but it was exceptionally large. Just over 4,500 square feet of living area inside, 4 bedrooms, 5 total baths, or 4.5 baths there. And just a really extraordinary property. It had river views, even though it wasn't right on the river. It was pretty much, you could see the river from the second story, and it had basically near instant access to open water there, just kind of around the corner. That golf access is pretty top-notch there, right next to the yacht club in the southeast section of Cape Coral. But this was clearly a custom home. Big, huge 2-story outdoor living space. Had an outdoor kitchen down there, a huge pool, a big spa, and a sun shelf. Of course, a tile roof. Huge ceilings throughout the interior of this home. It's just a super impressive, ultra-luxury home down there in the southeast section of Cape Coral. Had an elevator, and even the dock space. It had a really huge covered dock and a lift, along with a jet ski lift. So really great outdoor spaces here, in addition to all the beautiful interior finishes and things in that incredible custom home there in probably one of the best locations of the city. And so it's no surprise that this one at $2.6 million was the highest overall sale for the residential Cape Coral real estate market for the month of April 2026. And we'll probably have a couple more months coming up where we'll see some of these $2 or $3+ million sales here in the city of Cape Coral. So make sure you catch those every single month. But that wraps up the highest overall sales of the month of April 2026 for the Cape Coral real estate market. Let's start to dive into these statistics, and we're going to start off by the overall view of the Cape Coral residential real estate market. We'll look at the total stats, including all of the categories, and then remember, I'm going to release a couple separate videos that cover some of these categories like golf access homes and single-family off-water homes and condos and vacant land and things like that. So let's get into the overall Cape Coral residential real estate market. All All right, so this is going to take care of the entire overall residential real estate market. This is the 1,000-foot view on the statistics of the Cape Coral real estate market. And then remember, I'm going to be releasing some separate videos this month that contain all of the statistics for the different categories. So I'll do one with Gulf access and freshwater homes. I'll do one with the off-water single-family homes and the condos, and then I'll do a separate one as well for the vacant lots this month. Just trying something new out, seeing what happens versus giving you an hour-and-a-half long video with everything together. But let's get into the total market, overall market stats for the residential Cape Coral real estate market. Start off by the number of sales, and again, we're talking about numbers that just came out for April, and we're right in the middle of the high season right now. We're in the middle of spring high season, so we see the most sales that we're ever going to see during this time of the year. Really, March, April, and May are the three biggest months, and it was no exception this year. Take a look at this graph. This is the total number of monthly residential real estate sales in the city of Cape Coral going all the way back to January of 2024. And this past month in April was a high point for this two-plus year chart. We had 621 sales in the city of Cape Coral last month in April. That's up from March's number of 599, and March was a pretty good month as well. But we've just been really outpacing the last couple of years so far this month. We had kind of a slow start. January was obviously pretty slow there. I think we were under 350 in January, and January is just a generally slow month as well. You figure homes that generally sell about a month after they contract on it. Well, what were you doing a month before January? You were out having some fun doing the holiday stuff with your family. And so most people aren't shopping for real estate in December, and that's why we don't really see too many closings occur in January. But nevertheless, the first 4 months of this year have been pretty darn good, especially when you stack them up compared to the last couple of years. Last April, in April of 2025, we only sold 550 properties. Again, we're at 621 this past month. And then April 2024 was a little bit more than that, 606. But our April this year definitely outpaced the last two. And even if you take the total number of sales for the first 4 months in each of these years, back in 2023, in the first 4 months, we had 1,910 residential sales. In 2024, in the first 4 months, we had 1,959 sales. In the first 4 months of 2025, 1,827. And this year so far, the first 4 months, we've had 2,040 sales, which is about 213 more than we had at this point last year. So if you want to look at that like demand, which I think there's a case to be made that could be considered demand, we're selling about 12% more property so far this year than we were last year. So demand is certainly up. And gosh, 621, that's the highest month in terms of total number of sales that we've seen since June of 2022. So coming up on almost 4 years. And that's one of the reasons I think this real estate market is showing every sign of making this gradual turnaround. We've seen pricing kind of start to flatten off, and the sales numbers in terms of the total number of sales each month have been very, very good compared to the last few years. But let's take a look at the overall median price for the entire city of Cape Coral. So again, this covers every category of residential property. It includes condos, it includes single-family homes, it includes on the water, off the water, everything basically that's not an apartment complex or a commercial building or vacant land or something like that. This is the overall residential real estate market. And here's the graph for the median price going back to January of 2024. Take a look. We had a total median price last month in the city of Cape Coral in April of $366,000. That's up from March's median price of $352,500. And again, you can tell by this, we've just had a really gradual correction over the course of the last couple of years. And if you go back to April of 2025, the median price back then was $369,000. If you go all the way back to April of 2024, the median price was all the way up at $400,000. So just in the last 12 months, if you take April of 2025 to April of 2024, we've only gone down $3,000. We've only went from $369 to $366, and that represents less than 1% of a reduction. And again, I think that's one of the reasons that the case can be made that our pricing has been relatively flat really since last summer, and maybe even a little bit beyond. Depending on the category, we haven't really seen too much in the way of fluctuating prices up or down for the last 9 or 10 months. And if we look back 2 years ago, you can see it a little more clearly. At that $400,000 in April of 2024, we've corrected about $34,000. So the average property is $34,000 less now, or about 8.5% less than it was 2 years ago. But let's kind of take a look at the overall yearly median for the last couple of years. So this market started correcting. Probably the case could be made. It started correcting in spring of 2022. That's when prices peaked out. And then as we got into 2022, the pricing softened a little bit. We had the hurricane that kind of put a dampener on everything in September of 2022. And then we saw a little bit of softening in pricing in 2023, and then it really started to come down in 24 and 25. But let's just kind of review the yearly median price for the last few years. In 2022, the median price for the entire year, everything that sold that year, was $410,000. In 2023, for the entire year, it got down to $397,000. In 2024, it went to $388,000. Then it made a pretty good sized jump in 2025. The yearly median price in 2025 for the city of Cape Coral was $365,000. And then we've just kind of slightly ticked below that in 2026 so far. The first 4 months of the year, our median price is at $360,000. But, you know, it's going to take a few more months to get into the rest of the year to see what our summer median prices look like. But really, when you look at this graph, this 2-year graph, we kind of bottomed out on this graph in July of 2025. And for the last 9 months, it's been extraordinarily flat. Pricing has ticked up and down a little bit, but we haven't really seen any pattern of consistent decrease in pricing, and we really haven't seen it kind of tick up yet. If it is starting to tick up, it's going to probably take another 6 or 8 months of data to come in before we realize that that is actually happening. But our inventory has been coming down significantly, and that's kind of what I want to talk about next, the total number of active listings that are on the market. And this graph I'm about to show you gives you all of the active listings that were on the market at some point during the month. So this doesn't necessarily mean there are this many properties available right now. It just means at one point or another there were this many active listings on there. So some of them came off, some of them sold, some of them expired, some of them were just terminated and taken off the market completely, and then some are still on, but that's what these numbers are. So take a look at this graph. Again, going back to January 2024, we did not really see much of an inventory spike this year. We always, every single year as we get into November, December, and January, the inventory comes up with everybody anticipating the more activity that we see in the winter and spring months here, the first 6 months of the year basically. And we didn't get much of a bump this past season. Certainly coming into November and December of last year, that was the lowest inventory levels that we'd seen on this chart, and then it ticked up a little bit in January and February, and now it's already starting to come back down. So take a look at these numbers. So April, the total number of active residential real estate properties on the market in Cape Coral in April, 3,824. That's down from March's number of 3,943. But take a look at how much inventory we've taken off the market in the last 12 months. If you go back to April of 2025, the total number of actives on the market in April of 2025 was 4,871. So we've taken 1,047 properties, net properties, off the market in just the last 12 months. That means a reduction of inventory of 21.5% just in 12 months. And even if you go back 2 years ago when the inventory wasn't really as significantly high as it was last year, April of 2024, we had 4,310 properties on the market. So we've still taken a net number of listings off the market of 482, or 11.3%, just from where we were 2 years ago. But again, a lot of that reduction has happened in the last 12 months. It went up, spiked up high in February of last year's when this kind of chart peaked out, and then it's come down significantly, over 21% since then, in spite of the little seasonal bump that we always get. But again, it wasn't really a big bump this year. And as we get into the summer months, I promise you that these inventory numbers are going to sink lower and lower and lower, and we're going to see some fresh lows in terms of the last few years of inventory. And in fact, actually, we're lower right now in the middle of our high season when our inventory is at the highest. We're lower right now than we were in July of last year at the low point of the year. So again, that's why I anticipate as we get into the summer months when more of these properties are being taken off the market. We're selling a lot more properties too, but more of these properties will start to come off the market as we get into the slower summer months, and the inventory, those inventory numbers will continue to decrease. But we always get a summer drop In 2024, from the high part of the high season to the middle towards the end of summer, our inventory dropped about 14%. Last year, it dropped 29% from the spring to the summer. So even, if we get another 15% in our annual summer drop that we see in this inventory, even if we only get 15% and don't get close to that 29% we saw last year, that still puts us around 3,300 properties on the market, and we're starting to look like a little bit more of a normal real estate market. And that's one of the reasons that I'm saying, with the pricing leveling out the way it is, and with our inventory numbers hitting some fresh lows, for all intents and purposes, it looks like this real estate market cycle is starting to make a very, very slow turnaround. And the last thing that kind of brings up the rear are going to be price increases. And so we might need to get another 6 or 8 months into this before we realize that pricing is going back up. We still got some work to do on the inventory front, though, but if you're a seller in this real estate market, these are the kind of numbers that you want to see, because we had an inventory problem at this time last year, and it's just been remarkable how much inventory we've been able to take off the market in just the last 12 months. And it's going to be really interesting to see how much more we're going to take off here in the next 6 or 8 months. But that kind of wraps it up for all the statistics on the overall residential real estate market. Remember, I'm putting out a separate videos for the categories that we're going to cover, because some of these categories you got to see the Gulf Access video, because the statistics on the Gulf Access homes right now are absolutely incredible. And so I'm putting out a separate video for Gulf Access statistics for the Cape Coral real estate market. Make sure you catch that. But that wraps up the statistics portion of the overall Cape Coral residential real estate market for April and May of 2026. All right, vacant lots in the city of Cape Coral. I'm going to be mostly focusing on non-waterfront lots, because that's just the majority of the sales that we see every single month down here. And then at the end of this segment, I will kind of touch on a couple different categories of waterfront lots. We just don't see a lot of sales, so I don't include them in these charts. Well, let's start off with the total number of monthly lot sales. Take a look at this chart going back to January 2024 of the monthly number of residential non-waterfront lot sales in the city of Cape Coral. I mean, has there ever been a clearer trend than this particular chart right here? I mean, it's just consistently going down. We spike up and down every other month or so, but the overall trend is certainly down, down, down. And then we've seen a few months here where we've increased, but I don't necessarily think that that's a trend that we're heading in the opposite direction quite yet. But we did sell 61 lots last month in the city of Cape Coral in April. That's up from March's number of 55 vacant off-water lots, residential lots. But, compare that to the last couple of years. In April of last year, 2025, we sold 74 lots, and in April of 2024, we sold 102. But let's just look at the first 4 months of the year, and let's compare that to the first 4 months of the last few years. If you go back to 2023, the first 4 months of the year in 2023, we sold a total of 469 vacant off-water lots. You go to the next year, the first 4 months of 2024, 436, so we're down a little bit. Last year took a huge dip from 2024 to 2025. Last year, in the first 4 months of the year, we sold 297 properties. Again, in 2024, the first 4 months, 436. First 4 months of 2025, 297. That's a pretty significant drop-off. And then we had another significant drop-off into the first 4 months of this year. The first 4 months of 2026, we've sold 208 vacant off-water residential lots. That's down 89 from the pace that we were on last year in the first 4 months. That, if you want to look at it demand, that's a decrease in 30%. So the demand has been significantly waning on these off-water residential lots. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the resale prices for residential, single-family homes and things like that, they've come down to the point where it doesn't make as much financial sense for these builders to be building new construction properties. There's still plenty of construction going on out there, but there's just not nearly as much as there were a few years ago, because those build costs continue to be relatively high compared to what buyers are able to get in terms of the resale market. And as a result, we don't see as many of these production builders buying up a large swath of these lots to go ahead and build a spec home or build homes to suit buyers out there. And so we don't see the D.R. Hortons of the world, the Lennars of the world, the Christopher Allens, all these guys, Adams Homes, buying a whole heck of a lot of lots like they were a few years ago. And I think that's why this demand has been kind of rapidly decreasing over the last couple of years. But let's look and see, because in spite of that drop off in demand, let's look at the median prices for these things. So these are the median prices. This is the chart, again, going back to January 2024, the monthly median price. So last month in April, for those 61 sales that we had last month, the median price right in the middle was $43,000 even. And that's up very slightly from March's number of $41,600. But this chart's been remarkably flat, especially when you compare it to that number of monthly sales chart where everything's been going down drastically for the last 4 or 5 years. The median price, at least for the last 2 years, has stayed remarkably consistent. If you go back to the median price in April of last year, April of 2025, the median price was $46,500, and the median price in April of 2024 was $45,000. So we're not really significantly higher than we are right now, and it remains to be seen. We got to get a couple of more months in there to see if we've maybe ticked down a little bit. It looks like on this chart that if there's any trend at all in the last maybe 6 or 9 months, maybe we've come down a little bit, maybe only $2,000 or $3,000. So it remains to be seen, and you know, these median prices tend to waver. If you get a few more lots south of Pine Island Road that sell, that have central water and sewer and maybe utilities paid, those lots are selling in many cases $90,000, $100,000, $110,000, whereas the lots that we sell more of, which are in the northwest and the northeast locations, where if you build a home there, you're still going to be on well and septic, you haven't seen the utilities come in, you haven't seen the assessments yet, those lots are selling for 40 grand, maybe 35 grand, depending on where they're at. So this kind of averages out. You know, $43,000 is going to be probably a little bit higher than you would see on average for the lot sales on the well and septic areas in the northwest and the northeast, and it's going to be about half as much as the lot sales that you'll see south of Pine Island Road, where those properties have central utilities and maybe those $30,000, $35,000 in assessment balances have already been paid off on a lot of those places. So we have a big wide degree of pricing depending on the location in the city of Cape Coral, but overall averaged out, it's been remarkably flat for the last 2 years. Let's jump over and take a look at the inventory real quick. Inventory kind of had gone up and down a little bit, but just in the last maybe 18 months, we've kind of noticed a gradual increase in overall inventory, and this really contrasts against a lot of the other residential categories like single-family homes, golf access, condos, and things like that, where we've seen inventory decreasing. The inventory's been increasing for lots for the last year and a half or so. Take a look at this chart. So the total number of monthly active listings on the market at one point or another. There was a total of 1,082 lots on the market last month in the city of Cape Coral. That's down from March's number of 1,126. You want to compare that to April of 2025, there were only 1,037 on the market. So we're 45 more this year than last year. Inventory's up about 4.3% in the last 12 months. You take it back 2 years ago to April of 2024, that number was 945. So we're up a net of 137 lots, or about 14.5% from where we were 2 years ago. But again, that contrasts with the price chart that we saw, where things have been remarkably flat. So demand's been going down, inventory's been going up, and yet our pricing has been relatively flat. I think that's really a sign that we don't have a lot of forced sellers in the lot market. A lot of those folks own those lots cash, the sellers do, and they're not super motivated to make all these drops to get their lots sold. So as a result, the lots are staying out there for a lot longer in a lot of cases. Although I think the last 4 lots I've sold, I think we sold them in like 3 days a piece. It was pretty incredible. So if you price your lot right, you're going to get it sold. But nevertheless, I think on average, their lots are sticking out there on the market quite a lot longer these days. But eventually they're still selling for right around maybe a little bit less than they were 12 or 24 months ago, but pretty darn flat. Let's just touch on, again, these were the off-water residential lots, vacant lots. Let's just touch on a couple categories of waterfront lots, because we don't have a lot. Golf access vacant lots, there were 12 sales last month at a median price of $295,000. So you're talking, you know, it's incredible. It's about almost $250,000 more for a golf access lot on average than an off-water lot, at least in terms of the median price from last month. But again, that's 12 sales. I mean, that'll fluctuate quite a bit. You get a few more $400,000 or $500,000 lot sales in 1 month, that's going to drive that median price up. You can go to the Northwest and get a golf access lot in the Northwest for well under $200,000 these days. So it really depends on where you're at in the city. But in terms of the number of available golf access lots in the city of Cape Coral, there are 348 actives on the market last month. That's down 19% in 2 years. So the Gulf Access vacant lot market, the inventory has come down almost 20% in the last 2 years. And let's take a look at the freshwater lots. So we do sell quite a few more freshwater lots than Gulf Access lots. We did sell 35 freshwater vacant lots last month, and the median price for those were $50,000. So, you know, you're talking a median price for the off-water. There's 43 for $7,000 more on average. You can get something on the water, especially up in the Northeast or the Northwest. So why not go buy a lot on a freshwater canal if you can basically get it just for a little bit more than you can for the off-water stuff. The 35 sales at a median price of $50,000, 865 total actives on the market. There's a tremendous number of vacant freshwater lots on the market right now, and that's actually up about 2.1% in the last 2 years. So gradual increase in inventory of available freshwater canal lots in the city of Cape Coral. But that kind of wraps things up for the vacant lots. Let's go ahead and get into some advice for some buyers and some sellers, and then we'll wrap up with a summary of the total Cape Coral real estate market. All right, so if you're a current buyer in the Cape Coral real estate market, or you're anticipating being a buyer in this real estate market in the near future, what is my advice to you? What do you need to be paying attention to based on 20 years of being a full-time real estate broker here? I've seen every manner of real estate market in this business, in this location, and I can tell you just based on everything, I mean, you've been in the driver's seat as a buyer for a number of years right now, and we've seen pricing decrease even in the face of higher inflation numbers every year. You know, usually real estate kind of tends to keep up with inflation. So if you stack those inflation numbers on top of the price reductions that we've seen since 2022 when the market peaked out, I think we've corrected probably every bit of 30% in some categories, maybe even more than that in places like condos. But we're starting to see all of the trends indicate that we're in a flattening out. We've bottomed out in this particular market cycle. We've had 8 or 9 or 10 months of pricing that has been flat. It's bumped up and down a little bit, but there's been no clear trend for the last 8, 9, 10 months. Whereas in the years preceding that, especially in 2024 and 2025, for at least for the first half of the year of 2025, we had saw some consistent trends going in the downward direction on pricing. So pricing had some down pressure, and now we've seen inventory numbers, depending on the category, come down in excess of 30% just in the last 12 months. And we're heading into the time of year where those inventory numbers were going to be falling even more. And I was even talking to somebody the other day that was looking for a Gulf Access home, and she called me and she said, you know what? I've been looking at these properties for the last 12 months, and it just seems like everything on the market has been picked over right now. I'm not seeing the number of available properties that I was seeing 12 months ago, and I think that's completely an indication of the inventory numbers coming down as much as they have. I mean, Gulf Access has come down in excess of 30% from where it was 12 months ago, and on the other side of that, buying demand has been up in excess of 34% for Gulf Access homes in the last for this year compared to last year. So you're seeing demand go up, you're seeing inventory come down. Those trends cannot continue without the market bottoming out and turning in the other direction. So pricing's been flat 8, 9, 10 months, and you know we're going to be 6 or 8 months into an increasing market before we fully realize that we are in an increasing market. So my advice to you would be, if you're looking in the near future, if you could do something in the next 6 months, I would definitely encourage you to do so. If you miss the bottom of the market, that's not really a huge deal. I don't anticipate pricing to go up very rapidly. I think, if anything, it'll start to go up very gradually. And so if you miss that bottom of the market and you pay 2 or 3% more because you bought next year versus 6 months from now, I don't necessarily think you're in a bad position, because I think this overall area is extremely healthy. We're going to add another 100,000 residents between now and 2040 in the city of Cape Coral. And so that demand is going to always be there. People want the waterfront, they want the beautiful sunshine, they want the great weather in the winter down here. And so there's going to be consistent demand for people moving to this area for the foreseeable future. And I think the real estate market's future looks very bright in that regard. So don't worry about that too much if you're going to miss that bottom. But just be aware that we are experiencing the bottom right now, and pricing has been very flat. And as inventory continues to come off the market, you're going to have fewer properties to choose from out there, and eventually you're going to start to see these prices increase. We're already seeing, I couldn't tell you, I mean, in the last month, I would say I've been in 4 situations of multiple offer scenarios, either with my listings or with buyers that I'm representing. where we've gone to offer on a property and there's been 2 or 3 other offers on it. I haven't seen that really since 2023, maybe 2022. So it's there. The anecdotes are here, and they are backing up what the data suggests, which is this market's bottoming out, the inventory has come down, and eventually we're going to start to see a lot more competition for buyers out there, especially compared to where it was last year when you were kind of in the driver's seat and there was a million properties on the market. So my advice to you as a buyer is, if you're able to pull the trigger sooner than later, I think you're going to be in a better position. Don't let that keep you up at night. If you're planning on waiting 18 months or something like that, I still think if you catch it on the upside, you're going to be okay in the long term. And especially if you're pretending to buy something and keep it for 5 or 6 years. I mean, just as strictly as an investment, it's going to be a great decision, just because the total number of people that are coming down here, we're seeing more and more of them every year. So we got a great future here. And if I can help you with anything, if you are a buyer in the current Cape Coral real estate market, get a hold of me. Shoot me a call, shoot me a text, shoot me an email, whatever it takes. I always love hearing from your folks, but I can kind of take the information that you give me in terms of what you're looking for and the locations that you're looking for and all that kind of stuff, and kind of give you some advice in terms of what direction you need to be facing and kind of what to look out for. A lot of nuances in this real estate market, especially for buyers right now, so I'm happy to help you out. If I can help you with anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Call, text, email me anytime. But that's my advice for buyers. You're looking, it's looking like the market's bottoming out right now, so your best time to buy is probably going to be in the next 6 months. Maybe the next 8, 12 months, but eventually it's going to start going back up again, and there are going to be fewer properties on the market, and the pricing is going to be a little bit north of where it is right now. Okay, if you're a seller in the Cape Coral real estate market, what is my advice to you? What do you need to be paying attention to based on the 20 years that I've been a full-time real estate broker here in the city of Cape Coral? Well, I've seen all sorts of weird real estate markets, and it's certainly been a tough real estate market for sellers for the last few years. Especially last year. Last year was just really, really tough to be a seller, especially in spring of 2025 when those inventory numbers were out of control. The buyer demand was down from 2024 and 2023. We've really turned that around, and if you're a seller in this real estate market, that's exactly what you want to see. And if you had asked me 6 months ago if we were going to have the inventory numbers and the increase in overall sales numbers that we're seeing right now, I probably wouldn't have believed it. It's been shockingly high, both on the in terms of the more number of properties that we're selling this year versus last year, and so much less inventory. So much inventory's come off the market in the last 12 months. So you've got light at the end of the tunnel as a seller, and that's the things that you want to see are happening right now. The inventory's coming down, demand is up, and as a result, pricing across almost all categories has been flat for 8 or 9 or 10 months. And so that really points to the sign that this particular market cycle is bottoming out, and in the absence of something crazy macroeconomically that happens and we go into a massive recession where people are getting laid off right and left and the stock market's gone down and all that kind of stuff, I think all signs point to this market recovery starting to happen, and we're going to turn back into a seller's market before too long. Right now we're pretty close to equilibrium, and that's why that pricing has kind of flattened out in the last 8 or 9 months. But I think we're going to be 6 or 8 months into this recovery before we realize that we're back into an increasing market. Just anecdotally, I'm seeing a lot of multiple offer situations. In the last month, I've seen 4 of them, both on the buyer side and the seller side, and I really hadn't seen any since maybe 2023. So signs like that are another indication that this particular market cycle is turning around. We've bottomed out, and eventually we're going to start to see those prices start to rise again as we get more of that inventory off the market. Still got a little bit of work to do on the inventory front, but I think a lot of that work's going to happen this summer as more and more of those properties come off the market, and especially if we have a really strong summer. Summer's traditionally the slow time of the year for this real estate market, but if we have a really strong summer compared to the last few summers, I think that market's going to turn around even quicker. So as a seller, if you're able to sell, if you need to sell right now, just make sure you're pricing your property right. You got to price that property right more than anything other. And if you do all the things right, you could end up with those multiple offer situations like I've seen in the last month or two. And but you got to price your property right. That property has to be looking tip top. But the good news is there are vastly fewer properties on the market now, depending on the category, than there were this time last year. So if you're a seller in the current real estate market, give me a call, shoot me a text, shoot me an email. I'd love to hear about your property. You can send me that address, tell me a little bit about it, and I can give you kind of an idea of where you need to price that thing to sell it in the current Cape Coral real estate market. I don't think there's going to be a huge benefit to waiting until next year. If the pricing does start to go back up, I think it's going to be very, very gradual. Unless we just have the inventory just falls off a cliff all of a sudden and the demand stays up. But I think it's going to be a very slow turnaround. So if you wait 12 months, maybe you get another 0.2% out of your property than you're getting this year, but it's not like it's going to be worth 10% more next year. If anything, the inventory numbers will continue to go down, and it'll be a better selling environment for sellers then. But it really just depends on what happens this summer and how much inventory comes off the market and then comes back starting at the beginning of next year. But all signs are pointing to this particular market cycle turning around, and that's great news for sellers. And you've kind of had to cry yourself to sleep every night for the last few years if you are a seller in this real estate market, but things are looking up now. And if you are a seller in the near future, I would love to hear from you. Call, text, or email me anytime. But that's my advice for sellers. For the first time in a long time, things are starting to look pretty good, and there's some light at the end of this tunnel of this real estate market. So stay tuned. All right, let's wrap this up. Let's put a bow on it, give you a nice little summary of what's going on in the Cape Coral real estate market if you didn't want to wade through all of those nitty-gritty details. Well, what's happening in the real estate market right now is inventory is cratering. Demand is up significantly, especially in categories like golf access homes. We're seeing a ton more golf access home sales this year versus last year, and the inventory is significantly less than it was last year. Those two things together point to this particular market cycle turning around. The pricing across almost all categories has been very, very flat in the last 8 or 9 months. We haven't really seen a decrease or an increase in pricing since basically the middle of summer last year. And I think that's a really great sign for sellers that this particular market cycle is bottoming out. If you're a buyer in this Cape Coral real estate market, you're noticing that if you've been waiting for that bottom to occur, all signs are pointing to that we're at the bottom at this very moment, and we're probably going to get 6 or 8 months into this before we realize we're in an increasing market. So a lot depends on what happens this summer and in the remaining couple months here of our high season. If our demand continues to be strong into season, and we see a pretty significant decrease in inventory, as we probably will as we head into the slower summer months, I think that's going to help turn things around pretty quickly. And it's not like we're going to wait a year and the prices are going to be 10% more than they are now. If anything, it might be a 1 or 2% at the most, or it might still be flat heading into the later months of this particular year. So it's not something that's going to happen really quickly. If you're a buyer and you have to wait until this time next year to buy something, you're not going to be in that bad of a shape. If you're a seller and you're planning on waiting 12 months because you're going to get so much more money for your property, that's not really the case either. So the good news for sellers is there's a lot fewer properties on the market now, and you don't have to compete with as many sellers out there, but you still need to price your property right. You still have to have it looking tip top. And if you do all those things correctly, we're seeing for the first time in a long time multiple offer situations. I haven't seen stuff like that since like 2023, and I've been involved in 4 or 5 of those scenarios just in the last month or two. So we're starting to see things really indicate that we're making this turnaround here for this real estate market. But I think it's a very strong sign. We're still anticipating another 100,000 residents moving to the city of Cape Coral by 2040 here. So that long-term outlook for this particular area of Southwest Florida is very, very bright. So no matter if you are a buyer and you get in now or you get in 12 or 18 months from now, I think long-term you're going to be looking really, really good from an investment standpoint, because we're still one of the most affordable areas in South Florida. Certainly nothing compared to with the pricing and everything that's over there on the East Coast. I mean, especially the waterfront real estate over on the East Coast is just exorbitant. And even if you go down to Bonita Springs or Naples, waterfront real estate prices are crazy compared to what they are here. So you can still get a heck of a lot of property for a vastly less sum of money than you can in a lot of the other areas of Florida. And I think I think more and more people are finding that out every day, and which is why we're seeing such an influx of folks from other areas of the country moving here. But that pretty much wraps it up for the Cape Coral Real Estate Market Report for May of 2026. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, if you got something out of it, do me a favor, hit the like button on your way out. Make sure you're subscribed if you haven't subscribed. And if I can do anything for you, either buying or selling a property here anywhere in Southwest Florida, doesn't have to be Cape Coral, give me a call, shoot me a text, shoot me an email. Contact information's right there on the screen. And remember, I do these videos every single month. These are in addition to the weekly videos I put out where I'm just giving you some really good, useful information. I try to create a lot of value for you folks because I know if I can do that, more of you will call me and allow me to help you navigate this complex real estate market, whether you are a buyer or a seller. But thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time, and I will see you on the next video in a few short days.
Like and subscribe. Just kidding.